President Trump announced new tariffs on Chinese goods
In particular with China. We're going to be doing a Section 301 trade action.
A growing number of companies are filing lawsuits against the Trump administration.
The most urgent foreign policy issue facing President-elect Biden is China.
Will a change in administrations ease strained relations?
Where are we right now? What is the next step to be taken, either the Chinese or the U.S. side, to escalate this whole thing?
Right now, China just rips us. They've taken our money, our jobs, our manufacturing.
It's the greatest theft in the history of the world.
We must recognize that the government of the People's Republic of China and the government of the United States have had great differences. We can have differences without being enemies in war. We came in peace for all mankind.
In 1972, President Nixon changed American foreign policy towards China. As a consequence, changed the structure of international relations. From that point until the present, the United States and China have gone from being diametrically opposed enemies to partners in economic affairs. The world economy would be entirely different today if not for Nixon's opening to China.
President Nixon and Secretary George Shultz were very skilled, I think, in trying to work with China.
There's been some important changes along the way. In the 1970s, especially in the early 1970s, there were attempts by the US to engage more with China, to have what we call a détente, to really reduce the hostilities between the countries. And so since the 1970s into the 1980s, 1990s, and so on, there's been increasing engagement between the US and China, especially on economic ground. China has really started to grow economically. And so now they have the largest economy in the world, and the US and China have important dependencies on each other, especially economically.
The history of US-China relations is long and complex and wrapped up in all sorts of questions of race and imperialism as well. But the most recent round of tensions between the US and China, yes, has certainly been stoked by much of the president's rhetoric on China and an increased hawkishness on the part of certain politicians towards China.
In mid-2018, the US and China started imposing many tariffs on goods imported from the other country, meaning buyers would need to pay higher import taxes for their purchases. So far, the US has tariffed $550 billion worth of Chinese products, while China has set $185 billion.
The U.S. has had concerns about Chinese economic activity for quite some time. It didn't start with President Trump. One concern is that China might be competing with American firms in a way that our companies don't regard as entirely fair, using cheap labor, not abiding by environmental, labor, civil rights, and other regulations. So this is the kind of thing that American firms, American companies often talk about as being unfair trade.
And my predictions and hopes are that this new administration's tone will be much more diplomatic. I think we've had a great gap in our diplomacy, but I think that they will work with allies in a more constructive fashion, sit down and deal with China, and deal with the issues that are a problem rather than name calling.
There are many other countries that have similar complaints about China and haven't had a trade war. It was a tactic. It was a strategy that the Trump administration used to try to get China to give on some of the issues that we care about. And there's disagreement about whether it was effective. I think most analysts don't think it was particularly effective. That is, the costs that the US economy bore, slower growth, higher prices for consumers, were not really worth any concessions we eventually got from the Chinese.
Well, I don't have a crystal ball, but I certainly hope that the two largest economies can join hands and work together. And it makes no sense to have enemies if you can work out a plan, a strategy, and have commitments to follow through.
On January 20th, 2021, President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris were officially inaugurated and sworn into office. Biden nominated Chinese-American Katherine Tai for U.S. Trade Representative. With the next presidential transition team and new members for Congress, Senate, and the Cabinet, we, the people, hope to begin another page of U.S.-China history.
To hold China's government accountable for its trade abuses, technology, human rights, and other fronts, our position will be much stronger when we build coalitions of like-minded partners and allies.
I look forward to harnessing the power of our trade relationships to help communities lift themselves out of the current crisis. And I am grateful for this chance to serve, fight for, and reflect America on behalf of all of our people once again.